I'm 81 years old, and I need to tell you something that no one talks about when they're trying to teach you how to be a good man, a good father, a good husband. They tell you that love is sacrifice, that being strong means staying quiet, that taking care of your family means never asking them to take care of you. I believed that for 60 years, and it almost killed me. Not in the way you think. I didn't die from overwork or stress or any dramatic illness. I died slowly, piece by piece, by making myself so unnecessary that one day I looked around my own house and realized I had become a ghost in my own life. The people I loved most had learned not to need me because I taught them not to need me. And when they stopped needing me, they stopped seeing me. I want to tell you exactly how this happened, how a man can disappear inside his own family without anyone noticing, how silence can become a prison you build yourself. But I also want to tell you how I found my way back. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, subscribe and stay with me. Leave a comment if this story sounds familiar, because what I learned at 81 might save you from waiting as long as I did. I am 81 years old, and for most of those years I believed that love was duty, that being a good man meant showing up on time, paying the bills, and never complaining about anything. I remember leaving the house every morning at exactly 6. The door would click shut behind me, that same dry sound day after day for decades. My coffee cup would be sitting on the counter, already cold because I never took time to finish it. But I told myself this was what responsible men do. We don't linger over coffee. We don't ask for second chances at breakfast conversations. I believe that if I never failed anyone, no one would leave. The house had its rhythm. I would sit at the kitchen table in the evenings while my children did their homework. The yellow light above us would flicker sometimes, threatening to burn out, but I never replaced it. I liked the way it made everything feel temporary, like we were all just passing through this moment together. The pencils scratched against paper, math problems, history essays. I would read my newspaper, pretending not to notice when one of them struggled with a question. I thought helping meant solving things for them. I thought being present meant being quiet. They never asked how my day was, and I was proud of that. A good father, I told myself, doesn't need to be noticed. A good father is like the foundation of a house, essential but invisible, strong enough that everyone else can build their lives on top of it without thinking about what holds it all together. My wife and I, we had our routine too. She would wash the dishes after dinner and I would dry them. We moved around each other in the kitchen like dancers who had forgotten they were dancing. The plates clinked against each other as she scrubbed. The television played in the living room, but neither of us was really watching. Sometimes I would catch her looking at me across the kitchen, and I would wonder what she was thinking. But I never asked. Asking felt like admitting I didn't already know everything I needed to know about the woman I had married 30 years earlier. I told myself this was maturity, not distance. This was what it looked like when two people had moved beyond the need for constant reassurance, beyond the exhausting work of explaining themselves to each other every day. We were efficient, we were reliable, But there were moments, late at night when everyone else was asleep, when I would sit in that chair at the head of our kitchen table, the same chair I had claimed on the day we moved into this house. The same chair where I ate every meal, read every newspaper, waited for conversations that came less and less often. I would sit there in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, and I would feel something I couldn't name, something that made me wonder if all this quiet strength I was so proud of had cost me something I didn't even realize I was losing. But morning would come, and I would click that door shut behind me again, and the feeling would disappear into another day of doing exactly what I thought love was supposed to look like. The dinner table changed first, not all at once, but slowly, like everything else that fell apart in my house. I remember the exact evening I realized no one had spoken to me during an entire meal. We had eaten together, my wife, our 2 children, and me. The usual sounds, forks scraping plates, someone asking for the salt. But not one person had looked at me or asked me a single question. I sat there chewing my food and counted backward through the conversation. Nothing. I had been completely invisible for an hour. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked so loud that night. I had never noticed it before, but suddenly it seemed to fill every pause, every moment when I thought someone might turn to me and ask how my day had been. Tick, tick, tick. But no one did. And the strangest part, I felt grateful that they hadn't noticed my silence, because what would I have said anyway? That I was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, that I went to work every day and came home every evening, and somewhere in between I had started to disappear. That was the beginning of what I now know were the careful years. The years when I learned to make myself smaller and smaller until taking up space felt like an imposition. My children started calling me only when they needed something: a signature on a form, money for school trips, help moving furniture. The phone would ring, and I would feel my heart jump with hope, and then I would hear their voices asking for something practical, something that had nothing to do with me as a person. I told myself this was normal. This was what happened when children became adults. They stopped needing their fathers for comfort and started needing them for logistics. It was a sign of good parenting, I thought. We had raised independent people. But late at night, I would lie in bed listening to my wife breathe beside me, and I would feel like I was drowning in my own house, like I was a ghost haunting my own life. The day I realized I had stopped speaking unless someone asked me a direct question was a Tuesday in March. I remember because it was raining and I had spent the entire day listening to people talk around me without ever opening my mouth. My coworkers discussing weekend plans I wasn't included in, my family planning a vacation that somehow got decided without anyone asking what I wanted. I went to the bathroom during dinner that night and looked at myself in the mirror. My face looked unfamiliar, like a man I used to know but couldn't quite place. When had I become this person who waited for permission to exist? When I came back to the table, no one had noticed I was gone. The conversation had continued without me, flowing around the empty space where I had been sitting like water around a stone. That night I tried something. I cleared my throat and said, I was thinking we might paint the living room. Just to see what would happen, just to see if my voice still worked. My wife looked up from her magazine. What color? She asked, but she was already looking back down, already forgetting that I had spoken. Blue, I said. Maybe blue. But she was reading again, and the moment passed, and I understood that I had become optional in my own life. Not unwelcome, just unnecessary. I started noticing how often I said excuse me when I walked through rooms, how I waited for everyone else to finish talking before I spoke, and by then the conversation had moved on. How I had trained myself to need so little attention that I had forgotten how to ask for any. The silence was growing inside me, getting heavier, and I was running out of ways to carry it. I started catching myself doing strange things, setting the table for 4 people when only 2 of us were eating, buying groceries like my children still lived at home, keeping their rooms exactly the way they'd left them as if they might walk through the front door any moment and need their beds made with fresh sheets. My hands had memorized motions my heart couldn't let go of. One evening I found myself cooking a pot roast, the kind that takes hours, the kind I used to make for Sunday dinners when the house was full and loud and everyone fought over who got the biggest serving. I stood in my kitchen watching steam rise from the pot, and I couldn't remember why I was making enough food for 6 people. The smell filled the house, That rich, warm smell that used to bring everyone running to the kitchen, but no one came running. No one was coming at all. I ate a small portion and put the rest in containers, labeled them with dates, stacked them in the freezer like hope I could save for later. The next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. Not because I was sick, not because anything hurt exactly, but because I couldn't find a reason to get up. The house would be just as quiet at 8 in the morning as it was at 6. The phone would ring just as rarely. I would be just as unnecessary standing up as lying down. That's when I knew something was breaking inside me that I didn't know how to fix. I lay there staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I let myself think the thought I'd been pushing away for months. I am invisible. And I helped make myself this way. All those years of stepping back so others could step forward. All those years of swallowing my opinions so there wouldn't be arguments. All those years of making myself smaller and smaller until I had almost disappeared completely. I had trained everyone in my life to not need me, to not think of me, to not ask me what I wanted or how I felt or whether I was happy. I had taught them so well that now, even when I wanted to speak, I couldn't remember how to make noise loud enough for anyone to hear. My throat felt tight. My chest felt heavy. My whole body felt like it was carrying a weight that I couldn't name but couldn't put down. I was exhausted from pretending that this was enough, that this quiet, careful life was what I had always wanted. I was exhausted from being grateful for scraps of attention, from being thankful that people still remembered my name, even if they'd forgotten I had thoughts and feelings attached to it. I was so tired of making excuses for everyone else's silence while I disappeared into my own. That morning, lying in that bed, I finally understood what my mother meant when she used to say, "Sometimes the thing that's killing you is the thing you won't let yourself name." I couldn't carry this anymore. I couldn't pretend anymore. But I didn't know what came next. I got up that morning and made my coffee. But for the first time in 30 years, I didn't make enough for two. 1 cup, just one. The kitchen looked different somehow, smaller, like it had been holding its breath for decades and finally exhaled. I sat at that same table, in that same chair, but something had shifted. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt honest. I didn't turn on the radio to fill the quiet. I didn't busy myself with cleaning or organizing or any of the small tasks I usually use to avoid sitting still. I just sat and drank my coffee and let myself feel how empty the house really was. Not empty like something was missing, empty like space had been cleared. That afternoon, my daughter called, the same call she'd been making every few weeks for years. Quick, efficient, checking the box marked "Called Mom." But this time, when she asked how I was, I didn't say fine. "I'm tired," I said. "Oh, are you not sleeping well?" "No," I said. "I'm tired of pretending everything is okay when it isn't." The silence on the other end of the phone was so long I thought she'd hung up. "Mom," she finally said, "what do you mean?" And for the first time in years, I told the truth. "I mean, I've been invisible in this family for so long that I started to believe that was normal. I mean, I taught you and your brother not to need me so well that now I don't know how to be needed. I mean, I'm lonely in a way that has nothing to do with being alone." She didn't know what to say. How could she? I had never given her the language for this conversation. After we hung up, I sat back down at the kitchen table. My hands were shaking a little, but not from fear, from relief. I had said something true out loud, something real, something that mattered, and the world hadn't ended. The days that followed were different. Not better exactly, not fixed, but different. I started doing small things, selfish things. I bought myself flowers, not for any special occasion, just because I wanted color in the house. I ate dinner at 5:30 instead of 6 because that's when I was hungry. I watched programs I actually wanted to watch instead of leaving the television on whatever channel someone else had chosen. Tiny rebellions, but they felt enormous. My son visited the next weekend. He sat in the kitchen while I made lunch, and for the first time, I didn't ask him what he wanted to eat. I made what I felt like making. "This is different," he said, taking a bite. "How so?" "I don't know. Spicier, maybe?" I smiled. "I stopped cooking for children." He looked at me then, really looked, like he was seeing me for the first time in years. "Mom," he said, Are you okay?" "I'm learning to be," I said, and that was the truth. I'm 81 now, and I want you to know, this isn't a story about everything getting fixed. My children and I don't have perfect relationships. We probably never will. There are years of silence between us that can't be undone with a few honest conversations. But I'm not carrying that silence alone anymore. I exist now, in small ways, in quiet ways, but I exist. I make my coffee strong because I like it that way. I speak when I have something to say, even if my voice shakes. I take up exactly as much space as I need, no more but no less. The peace I found wasn't in reconciliation. It wasn't in apologies or grand gestures or dramatic moments of understanding. It was in stopping, in setting down the weight of other people's expectations and finally asking myself what I needed. What I needed was to remember that I matter, not because of what I do for others, not because of how useful I am, but because I'm here. Because this is my one life and I deserve to live it as myself. The kitchen chair isn't empty anymore. I sit in it. All of me sits in it, and that finally is enough.